In this video, I'll demonstrate how to easily make a companion follow you around using pathfinding. I'll demonstrate two different techniques for creating a navigation region. The best technique to use will depend on the type of game you're creating. I'm starting with a very basic level and a character that can move around. Let's walk through how to add a companion to an existing project. So go ahead and create a new scene. In my companion scene, I have a character body 2D as the root node. I added an animated sprite 2D that I named body, and it has one simple animation, and that is to fly. And then I added a collision shape 2D to that character body 2D. And as you can see, it's just a basic circle. The first thing you want to do is make sure your character body 2D is selected. I have named mine companion. So we're going to click on that and we're going to add a navigation agent 2D. Then you're going to want to save your scene so that we can attach a script to it. If you have not already, right click on your character body 2D and click attach script. I already created one, so let's walk through that now. In our companion script, we are extending the character body 2D, and at the top we have a couple of export variables. The first one we are calling player, and this is what we're going to attach the player or whoever you want your companion to follow to. Next, we have some variables to control the movement of the companion, such as speed, acceleration, and friction. We have a couple of onReady variables, one for the navigation agent 2D that we created. The next is the animated sprite 2D that I named body. In our onReady function, we are setting some navigation agent 2D variables to control the companion's movements and how they follow the path. You can play around with these three variables to control how close the companion will get to the player when following and how accurately they follow the path. In the physics process, we're controlling how the companion moves. We're starting by getting the direction. To do that, we take the navigation agent and get the next path position, and we minus the current global position, and then we normalize it. Next, we're calling the change direction function and passing it direction.x. And all we're doing from there is flipping the sprite or not flipping the sprite based on the direction they are traveling. The next thing we're doing is setting the movement target. In the set movement target, we are awaiting the physics frame, and then we are setting the nav agent target position to the player position minus a y vector of 40. And the reason we're doing this is we want the companion to follow the player just above its head, since in this case, our companion is a bird. Now back in our physics process, the next thing we're doing is we're checking to see if the target is reached. If the target is not reached, we're setting the velocity based on the speed and acceleration that we defined at the top. If the target is reached, we're setting the velocity to 0. And then finally, we're calling move and slide. Now all we need to do is create a navigation region for the companion to navigate through. To do that, let's just go to wherever you have your basic level. Now if you remember, I said I was going to demonstrate two different techniques to create a navigation region. So let's do that now. Let's start by adding our companion into our scene. So you can click up here, or you can just drag and drop from the file system the companion scene onto the scene. Next, let's create a navigation region 2D. So click on the root and go ahead and click the add, and we're going to search navigation region 2D. Creating a navigation region is pretty simple this way. We're just going to go to the inspector, make sure your navigation region 2D is selected, and on empty, click new polygon, and then click it. And then you'll get these points to create and draw points for where your region is going to be. So for this one, let's start here. We're just going to click there. And then since we have this little floating platform, what we're going to do is we're just going to click here and then go down and around it, because we don't want our companions to be able to fly through the tile map. And what you want to do is you want to make sure you cross this point on this side, the left side of it, because we don't want to create a gap where a companion can't travel through. We're just going to come down here. And for simplicity, I'm just going to shoot straight across here. And then once you get to the end, all you got to do is hit enter, and it'll finish it off for you. And then you can click bake navigation polygon. And if you zoom in, you can kind of see the area that it created. We have a nice space around our floating tile here, and we also have a space around this. So our companion will not be able to travel through these points, which is what you'd expect. Actually, one last thing I want to do before I demo this is I want to make sure the player and the companion are on different collision layers. So if you click on companion, inspector, and then collision, make sure your companion is on layer 3, and then we're going to put the player on layer 2. Again, depending on the type of game you're making, you may want them on the same layer so that they can collide, but in this case, I'm going to keep them on separate layers so they don't collide. What we also need to do is select companion, and then we need to assign the player as our player. If you remember, if we go into our companion script, we created an export variable for player, and whatever you set to this is what your companion is going to follow. So in this case, we want our companion to follow the player around. So now we can run this. And as you can see, our companion is following us around everywhere on the screen just as we expect. And if we come up here, you can see the companion is not traveling through these points. A nice little feature to see what the path is that the companion is creating is you can set a debug and show the path. So if you come into your companion scene and make sure Navigation Agent 2D is selected, under debug, you can click enable. Let's run this and show you what that looks like. So now you can see that it's actually showing the path that the companion is creating to find you. This is great for debugging purposes to make sure it's actually going around objects like you expect. So as promised, now I'm going to show you the other technique you can use to create a navigation region. So let's just go ahead and delete this. And make sure your root is selected for the map. And we're going to add a tile map layer. I'm using 4.3, so I'm using the new tile map layers. Even if you're using an older version that doesn't have the new tile map layers, this still works the same way, so don't worry. So what I'm going to do is create a new tile map, just like I would before, by clicking on Tile Set, New Tile Set, and then click on it. Make sure Tile Set is selected down here. For this, it really doesn't matter what the tile looks like, because it's going to be hidden. So I'm just going to search Tile Set in the Sunnyland packs, and I'm going to leave a link in the description to all the assets that you see in this project. So I'm just going to select this one and drag it on. I'll click yes to that. And then if you come back to the inspector, you're going to find navigation layers. So click the drop down on that and click add. And now we have a navigation layer that we can set. So click on the tile set you want. I'm just going to select this brown one because again, you're not going to see it. And I'm going to scroll down. So click select, click on the tile, and then scroll down, and it's going to be navigation. And this is going to be very similar to how you set up collision shapes if you're familiar with that. And we're just going to set the whole tile. There we go. So we can save that. And now we can click on tile map. So make sure you select the tile that you created the navigation for. And if you click the rect symbol, you can easily just drag and create an area like this. And then you just want to paint everywhere that there's not already a tile that you wouldn't want the companions to travel through. And at the end, you should have something that looks kind of like this. Now all we're simply going to do is we're going to drag the tile map layer that we created as the navigation region all the way to the top, so it's behind the background. And just for good measure, you can actually click and hide it too. So now the navigation region is still there, and it'll still work for your navigation agent, but it won't be seen or visible by the player. So now if you save this and run it, you can now see that it is working exactly the same as it was before. And you can see it is still going around areas that you would expect. So like I said, that's two different ways to create a navigation region, and depending on the style game you're making, will depend on which one is probably best to use. Well, I suppose.